make us who we are.
I am really, Your Excellency, very impressed by the Kidik style of management. Akiamua ni hapa, hata kama ikuta anapitia hapa.
Serikali hii ambayo imeongozwa na Mheshimiwa Rais William Ruto ndiyo itakuwa serikali ya kumaliza kutoka Kenya hii shida na aibu ya uhalifu na kutojali sheria.
We have to work hard so that we can justify the faith, the commitment, the sacrifice.
Because we did not gazette ordinary and habitual places of residence anywhere in this categorization to very specific areas with geographical coordinates. So the operation has been going on. So to answer the first question, which is the current state of security in those areas, I am happy to report, Chair, that the security situation has greatly improved in those areas. We have been able to flush out dangerous criminals who are hiding in the spaces that we had gazetted. We followed the procedure under international law by first making public announcement on the particular areas where we wanted members of the public who could be there to vacate. And as I've said, these are not habitual places of residence. These are gorges and caves where criminals were hiding. But the reason we followed this route is that we discovered that what these bandits had done is that they would steal livestock and retreat and stay in those places which are inaccessible and remote. And they would stay there for several months. And therefore they had invited civilians whom we thought or we assumed could be, some of them could be members of their families, who may not necessarily be armed bandits, to live there with them. That's why we made the announcement and provided an opportunity for any law-abiding citizen who was in those places to get out. And that is in accordance with the established procedures of international law of conducting security operations. The situation has improved. We were able to flush out dangerous criminals from all the gazetted areas, and some of them, or many of them, used the 24-hour window we had offered to escape. But we had no alternative because we needed to provide any civilians in those places with time to move out. But those places now have been completely cleansed and there are no criminals living in all the areas that were gazetted. Over the time that the operation has been going on, we have been able to recover in excess of 200 firearms voluntarily surrendered. We have deliberately delayed a forceful disarmament for strategic reasons, but we will get there because we believe there are many more illegal arms in the hands of unauthorized people in that area. But as a strategic measure, we have delayed that process. But we must get there at some point because every illegal firearm in the hands of unauthorized people must be handed over to the government, either voluntarily or by force. Honorable Chair, we have registered significant successes. First, it is the first time we have a police-led, KDF-supported operation under the new constitution and Article 241. It has worked very well. The relationship between the security agencies has been wonderful. The input of other agencies, including NPR, has been exemplary. That is a good lesson for us in this space. Before we declared the operation, there was almost zero recovery. When livestock used to be stolen in those places, the recovery was minimal. But I'm happy to report, Chair, this operation has ensured that in cases where attacks take place, because we have had a few attacks even when the operation is ongoing, we have been able to recover about 78% of the livestock that has been stolen. We have made it clear to our officers and the agencies involved that we must move to 100% recovery, and it is going to form part of their performance targets, that in the unlikely event that a raid is successful, the stolen livestock must return. In the process of the 6 or so months that we've been having that operation, we've been able to arrest and in some cases neutralize dangerous bandits who had been responsible for the command of the banditry network. Many have been arrested and arraigned in court, and some of them were neutralized as they tried to engage security agencies in an exchange of fire. We have learned in the last 3 weeks that a number of suspected criminals who had escaped during the public notice we had given for the vacation from the disturbed and dangerous areas. Some of those criminals are trying to regroup and get back into the spaces from which they were repulsed or flushed out. We have put in measures to ensure that those places will not be accessible again to anybody under whatever pretext. In other words, Chair, the Corcoran Hills, I don't know whether you are able to overfly the Corcoran Hills. You will understand. No human being would live there. The Tandare Valley, the Malaso escarpment, those spaces are not available for pastoralists or any other activity that criminals used to hide under to access those places. They are out of bounds, and therefore in terms of status, they are still gazetted. The orders are still active. We have not degazetted them. So we will repulse any person trying to access those areas. They, for our purposes, are still scenes of crime. We have credible information that there is an effort to try a few criminals to try and find their way into those spaces. I want to assure you, Chair, and the committee, it will not happen, and we will repulse them, and we'll use all methods lawful to make sure that the criminals hiding under the pretext of looking for pasture do not get access to the gazetted areas. The conversation around pasture and other things can go on elsewhere, but not in those spaces. Honorable Chair, the second question is the status of the operation. As I have said, the operation is ongoing. The relationship between the agencies is very good. There have been some challenges. Some of it is that even with the operation ongoing, have still had some raids, and we have even lost some lives. Although in a very, compared to what was happening by the time the operation was declared, it's maybe 5%. Our target is to eliminate even that 5% and free Northern Rift Valley from banditry and cattle rustling. At the end of last year, Chair, I gave a commitment to the country that 2023 is the year that Kenya will win the war against banditry. I know I have 4 months left. I want to promise that the 5% of success that is still being reported in that space, we will wipe it out before the end of the year. And number 2, we will sustain our presence, our surveillance in such a manner that we do not roll back on these gains. And therefore, we have a job to do, and we want to assure you, Chair, we will not leave anything unattended until Kenya wins totally against these criminals who have terrorized these people for a long time. At this point, Chair, I also want to report that beginning September, we are going into phase 2 of our comprehensive security plan for Northern Rift Valley as a way of backing up the use of force and the use of weapons, which we have applied so far to contain the criminals. And we are processing the necessary cabinet papers and memorandums ourselves, the Kenya Defense Forces and other relevant agencies, and the President has supported us that we're going now to have for approval in cabinet a plan for these areas in terms of the education system, schools. Part of it has begun. We've started rebuilding some of the schools, but there are many more schools that were destroyed in that part of the country, and there are many schools, new schools, that we need to establish. We are going into agricultural projects. Some of them have already begun, like Pekera irrigation scheme, which had collapsed in Baringo, is now back. There is the irrigation which was sponsored by partly Red Cross, partly Government of Kenya, at the Koloa area at the intersection of Elgeyo Marakwet and Tiati. That irrigation program is already on track, and we're going to restart it again in September. The second phase will also involve the construction of peace schools, mainly in Kerio Valley and other areas of intersection, to build schools that can accommodate children from different communities and build a new generation of peacemakers and lawful citizens as a way of fighting banditry in the long term. That plan that is pending approval by cabinet will also involve the allocation of a number of water facilities, water dams, and both small and big dams, roads, and so forth, for that area as a long-term way of making sure that that banditry culture does not return in those areas. Number 3, the criteria for identifying locations for the siting of security operation camps. We have, let me say as follows, Chair. We do not just establish camps just like that. There is a criteria, and that criteria is not cast in stone. We keep on reviewing the siting of our security operation camps from time to time, because a place can be a corridor for movement of stolen livestock now, but as soon as you seal that corridor, criminals invent another route elsewhere. So you cannot you have to devise a way of either establishing a new camp or even moving this one, because what we are chasing for is peace. What we are chasing is crime prevention. It's not just the siting of those camps. But in the statement which I filed to this committee, the statement dated 17th August 2023, which is already available to the committee, I have listed the criteria that we use for the establishment of camps. It includes things like, and it's on page 4 of my statement, the frequency of attacks in that area, things like whether there's a county, an inter-county boundary to ensure that livestock stolen from one county do not cross to another and therefore bring recovery problems. Other criteria includes the threat posed within that particular area and so forth. So we have that criteria, but as I've said, it is not cast in stone. It keeps on changing depending on the assessment that we make from time to time. Honorable Chair and members, I was also asked to respond to item number 4, the number of reservists recruited and trained per sub-county. I have provided that information on a table on page 4 at the bottom, the entire page 5 of my statement, and part of page 6. Suffice it to say, Chair, in the interest of time, that in total we have recruited 2,057 police reservists, 2,057. We have trained 1,354, and 700 are yet to be trained. 703 are yet to be trained. The distribution per county and sub-county is in my statement for all the counties that are under review. We have still outstanding requests which we are still processing for additional NPRs in places like Marsabit, which has been pending for a while, and even where we are not finished training NPRs, we have secured in this budget a bit of money under our security operations budget, which will ensure that we train all the NPRs that have been recruited and process maybe a few more requests from especially the emerging threats in Northeastern, where we need a bit more of local NPR support in our counter-terrorism effort. Number 5, Chair, I was asked to respond to the issue of the procedure of eviction of residents from areas declared as disturbed. Chair, we have not evicted anybody. What happened is that we removed criminals who are hiding in caves and gorges. And what we did is that we again made a public appeal through the elected leaders from the areas concerned, that if in the event that there were people who were legitimately residents within the coordinates of the gazetted areas who were evicted, we require the support of the elected leaders to identify every one of such people. Of course, we'll have to authenticate the claims, and we will resettle any person who has a genuine displacement claim from this exercise. From my experience, having been there more than 50 times, in those areas, there is nobody who was evicted. It's criminals who are flushed out from caves. But the appeal is still out there. If anybody has a legitimate displacement complaint of having a legitimate habitual residence in the gazetted areas, the government will provide resettlement support because it's the obligation under the law of our country. Number 6, humanitarian assistance offered to IDPs. Again, I think I have answered that question. I know I have provided humanitarian support on behalf of government to 1 or 2 cases, mainly around the Maliza escarpment, as a result of the request of the elected leaders from Samburu County. And it ended there because they said these are people who were originally elsewhere but were relocated because of the orders I made on 13th of March 2023. And so the humanitarian support we provided, because there was evidence there were people who were camping somewhere. But those leaders are yet to come back to us, because I told them if there is evidence that those people were evicted from the places that fall within the geographical coordinates that we had gazetted, we will resettle them. So we are waiting for that report, but we don't have any people, to our knowledge up to now, who were displaced from places of habitual residence. Number 7, the sitting design single cab Land Cruisers used by the police or security operations. Allow me to answer this question as follows, Chair. That we are improving on the equipment and transport facilities for our officers, not only in the operation Maliza Uhalifu, but the officers who are serving in the Boni Enclave, as well as the officers serving in Northeastern in the counter-terrorism effort. Cabinet has already approved the modernization program, which was long overdue, because what had happened is over the years our equipment was getting down. The approvals have been given. We have started procuring the equipment we require, and therefore the question of the nature of transport of our officers in the area that is under this operation, that question should not be a question any longer. We are going to provide the most modern means of equipment to protect the lives of our officers against both physical attacks by criminals, but also remote attacks like we have seen in Northeastern and the Lamu area through IEDs. So we've taken care of that. We have enough procurement which should be delivered any time from now, and we've sorted out that problem. We'll have enough MRAPs, we'll have enough APC carriers, that are armored personnel carriers, mine resistance armored vehicles. We are also going to acquire air support for that work, and so the criminals have nowhere to hide anymore. And we'll do that not just for the North Rift Maliza Uhalifu operation, but also the counter-terrorism effort. And so I think we are in good space. As to how we will transport them, that is not something for me to announce, but we'll take care of our safety, because we'll take care of the safety of our officers so that they can be able to perform their duties and they are protected from attack. Number 8, the last one, fuel allocation policy. I want to admit we have had challenges with the existing policy on allocation of fuel, and we must review it. We want to review it this financial year, because some of the vehicles, first of all, we will be enhancing the allocation. 450 liters per month is too little. Number 2, asking a vehicle or an officer to travel 100 kilometers to fuel the tank of the car, and then on his way back 3/4 of that fuel is over, is meaningless. You better even not have that facility. So some of the, and not all, some of the policy issues there, we need to review them by first of all making sure that our officers get fuel at the nearest point, not necessarily a specific fuel station, because the current policy was restricting the fueling of our cars to specific outlets of specific dealers, and in some cases we have had reports of some cars traveling even 150 kilometers to go and fuel, and then by the time they come back the fuel is almost depleted. So we are reviewing the policy on vehicles and fueling to make sure that the cars can fuel to the nearest point, so long as it's a dealer who is approved and certified to provide that supply. And also we have been able, through your support, Chair, and the committee support, we have been able to get a good allocation of a new fleet of leased vehicles for both National Police Service and GAO, and in a space of 3 weeks, a month, because yesterday we were at the Treasury finalizing, we were with the Treasury, National Treasury, finalizing the financial aspects, but in a space of about a month we will have replenished some of the old cars that you may have seen there in the field, and that applies to both the GAO and the police, and therefore if we do this with new cars and new fleet and a better thought out fuel allocation policy, we are going to see results even as we sustain the war against terror. Thank you, Chair. Not terror, banditry.
Thank you, the CS. You've really tried to run through all the listed questions. But you remember, I did add 2 more. They were not in the first invite letter. These are the characters that are happening in between the issue of the Nyakach registration. It's fluid. Actually, we reported that some members of the society have lost their life. And the problematic lab issue, you Kenya, I'm sure, want to know what is happening. Have members react, but nevertheless, on the issue of North Rift, I think you really exhaustively tried to address the questions, and these members really appreciated. Your officers were so good on the ground when we did visit them. You provided the logistic support that was necessary for this committee to achieve the objective. So you can answer the Nyakach situation and the LAM.
The Nyakach Kericho matter, especially Sondo, is an old problem. It recurs.
It's fueled by 2 things. One is politics, and when I say this, let me say it's not unique. There are so many similar situations across Kenya. Sometimes around counties of different ethnicities, some other times involving counties of the same ethnicity. We have about 27 counties which have problems around the border. They are struggling over this town. One county wants to collect revenue, the other county says no, this town is in our county. Right from Kajiado, Makueni, Taita Taveta, Meru, Tharaka Nithi, Isiolo, Meru, so it's a general problem. It should not be seen as just Kericho and Kisumu. The recent wave of attacks, according to the intelligence we have, was caused by politics. So that an underlying problem which has been there for many years, which was mainly actually commercial. So it was a commercial issue about revenue, which county collects revenue up to where. But politics sometimes comes in and colors and takes advantage of that. So it was caused by politics, political differences, and I agree with you. The situation is not good because a few of our people have lost their lives. And what we have done, as you speak, there is a team, high-level team from the ministry, which is on the ground now. And I have directed the Rift Valley security team headed by the regional commissioner to go and stay there because I'm going there myself and I want a report before I go there. We also realized that there were gaps, and we have already taken we have initiated disciplinary action against some officers whose laxity and connivance has led to this senseless loss of lives. Because if a crime is committed, it doesn't matter if livestock is stolen in Kisumu by a criminal from Kericho. It's just a crime. There's no politics about a cattle thief. There's no tribe issue. It's just a thief. And so when politics and other things came into play and a bit of incitement, that's why we have seen the kind of losses you've seen. I want to assure the committee we will stop that. We'll stop the escalation of that violence. We will depoliticize the process. We'll be neutral, and we will do what is right. I've even asked my PS, because he comes from the neighboring area. He's in Kericho today, but I've told him to stay away so that we use the other officers we have who are not locally from that area to make sure that we clean that mess. It's not looking good, and it's a small matter because nobody is being evicted from their home. So just that thieves come from this side, they go and steal from the other side, then other people come and retaliate. So Chair, we will stop that orgy of violence, and it's part of the performance contracts of all the officers and security managers there that one more single life is lost. It must go with at least the explanation we'll be giving Kenyans is that another one incident, we must show a casualty on our side who has taken responsibility for sleeping on the job, because we cannot have a small matter like that just causing us havoc all the time. On the Lamu issue, the Chair and members, we have been able to make some good progress. And as I said the other time, I was before this committee, I think, or another committee. You see, we do not even report the many successes that very successful preventive measures that we do, because sometimes you don't want to alarm the public. But we have also realized there are gaps that we need to address there. One gap is that we have realized there are few criminals who are taking advantage of historical and genuine grievances which have been in that part of our country over land and other issues which we are resolving. And they are taking that advantage and using that perhaps to aid criminals, including Al-Shabaab terrorists. And the other gap is that there has been continuous encroachment of the Boni Enclave forest. And therefore, we have taken the decision. Number one, we are going to open up 6 security roads in Lamu immediately. Number two, we are going to draw a cut line, because some of the problems are being caused by people who have encroached into the body forest, and so there must be a cut line so that we know whoever, just like we have done in North Rift and other places, we say whoever is inside certain coordinates must leave so that we manage security. But right now there are people, some of them are pretending they are doing agriculture, but they are right inside the forest, and we've discovered some of them could be harboring criminals. And we have also discovered there are people taking advantage of historical injustices to aid and abet terror attacks. So we are on top of things. I have been there as chair sometimes covertly, even this week, because and this is where I also request for your support when you talk to your colleagues in the house. You know, some of them, they want us to be telling them when we are going to their constituencies all the time. It is not feasible all the time, because like the current threats we have in Lamu and northern Kenya is a significant threat, and we are not able to transact all our interventions in the public realm. So we will need a bit of understanding. Some of it will do covert missions. Our aim is not to isolate any leader or make them look irrelevant. Our aim is to make sure that we achieve the results we want to achieve. So I've been there, and we will be going back there, and we have instructed the security teams there to bring proposals on and involve the public so that we agree on where the cut line will be, because we also want to carry the public along so that we are able to manage that space a little better. But we are making good progress. The equipment that we have started receiving is also going to boost that effort there, and I think, Chair, that is all I can report for now.
Thank you, CS. I think we are going to try to be, I don't know how we are going to manage time. It's already 2, because we are not blaming anyone. Mike, we need to handle a lot of echoes. So thank you, CS. I'm just trying to getting for time. It's already 2. So I request members to be precise and to the point. But before I do, I think I'd mentioned earlier when I said that this committee really appreciated. We managed to be in the 2 counties listed, we mentioned earlier, and your officers were really. And so this committee, on behalf of the committee, I want to appreciate the effort you took personally, and your officers who are really they were they were ready, and they give the support that was needed. Just 2 things. I don't know, maybe probably you didn't understand the context of the issue of the question number 7. Just want to maybe paraphrase it again. The seating design of the single cab land cruisers. I know we're just about, or you're about, as you just reported, to release these vehicles. The current situation, the seats in the open land cruisers is made in a way that the police face each other, like the matatu, which for operation cars supposed not to be the case. It makes it hard for them to respond to any attack. It makes them actually even hard to even alight if they need to jump out of the cruisers. Members who have been there managed to see how the conservancies and other NPR, they're made in a way that the police officers sit back to back The cruiser is actually made in a way that it's easier for them to jump and maybe roll. The other officers will be facing the other side and the other one the other side. So we think maybe before we dispatch, we can able to make modification so that all the vehicles that are marked for those areas can be modified so that the sitting arrangement is easier for them to respond to the ambushes and attack. We don't need extra money there. It's just the issue of, so that is exactly what we meant by question number 7. I think on the issue of the fuel, it's well answered. It was really logical that you can actually have a car or a vehicle using more fuel to go to draw fuel than actually what is even enough to take them to the station. So it's something that needs quick adjustments, and we are glad that you're working on that. It should be actually the pre-qualified dealers should be based on availability, as long as they are being confirmed that they can able to offer the needed subsidies. So I think we don't have much there. On the issue of Laikipia, just to so that I can able to give to the other members, we noted with concern that it was reported when we went there. We met with the security team, the county, and it was reported that out of quite a number of AMRAPs and APC carriers, hardly 2 were operational. The rest were grounded. And we hope that must have been brought to your attention. Maybe it's not much money needed. We were told even other vehicle needed as small as 200,000 shillings to fix them and having them operational. So we think it's something that you need to take it up. It does not really need much. And I'm happy that you even actually confess that this committee has been always ready and willing to support wherever and whenever the resources allocation has been asked from them, so that to enable you run the needed operations. The other issue was on the issue of Baringo. From the response you gave, Bwana CS, the distribution of NPR, you can see an outright bias, unless maybe you tell us otherwise, that the Tiati East and Tiati West has got the minimum, the least number of NPR, 5 and 7, while they are like Marigat 162, Baringo North 192. Maybe you need to tell us why Tiati or West and East got the minimum, because we thought maybe it would bring a sense of imbalance in a manner that maybe a particular community may view to be neglected, or not really considered. You must have a reason. Maybe you need to tell us. Lastly, so that I give to the members, it's true you had mentioned about the issue of humanitarian grounds efforts, but we in Laikipia we found about 4 IDP camps, actually 4, which literally were, I think there was some miscommunication, but the situation somehow, I think your team managed to return people to their homes, some, apart from the Mugogodo forest, which we managed to flee over, and we are really surprised, and we could understand why the situation was like that. So I just want to tell you that there was such a problem in that area particularly, and even in Baringo, there were some IDPs which actually never got any support. We tried even to reach special program ministry to supply them with the relief food, because actually they were hungry, there was no shelter, there was nothing. I think I will give my members, starting from the vice, quickly, so that we'll let them in.
Thank you very much, Chair. Waziri, I think in the interest of time, I'll be very brief. First of all, for those of us who went to Baringo, what we saw was a systematic and timely failure of administration. I think maybe successive governments have never seen the need to invest in security in some parts of this country. The problem in Baringo actually is in Tiati East. It is not in West. It is not in Baringo South. It is not in Baringo North. So for us to fix the issue of insecurity that affects Laikipia, I think parts of Marakwet, is for us to fix Tiati. Observe that the operation that we witness, experience, I think the operation has to be fluid to be able to remove those aggressors. Because if we are just holding ground, it is still makes the population to be fearful, people to remain where the camps are. So we are not likely to get full benefit from that operation. So for that reason, my advice to cover it well. I think for fuel in operation, for those soldiers in operation, fuel must be done to pick 100 liters of fuel. So as you have said, it is an issue of policy. But I believe that sometimes we must make decisions that may not be favorable to those who may have caused that in the beginning. The third issue, I think, is making decision. I think for many years, we have, because of, I think, political interest, we have refused to make a decision. The issue that is happening between Kisumu and Kericho, it is about a border, a decision not being made about a border. The issue of Loruk in Baringo, the issue of Kapedo between Baringo and Turkana. I think when we know what are the answers, let us bite the bullet. We must make the decision and sit back to address the repercussion, as opposed to setting communities against each other, because that has been the thorn in the flesh. The other issue is administration. I would really say, without blinking an eye, the administration has failed us. And this failure has been caused by the administrators on the ground fearing both the politician and the communities. A county commissioner has a mandate. The DCC, the ACCs, even the chiefs, while they look simple individuals in communities, they carry some levels of decision making and also responsibility. I think going forward, what you as the CS, because you have covered a lot of ground, those you deploy must make the decision, and if there's omission of commission, somebody must maybe take some punishment, or there must be recourse. Because what we have seen is an attempt to try and run Kenya from Nairobi. It is really not possible, because the CCs or the RCs, wherever they are, they have responsibility that they can do good things wherever they are sitting. But for everybody to think that let the minister or the president make a decision on a matter that can be settled by those on the ground, I think is why we are addressing things that could have been resolved very easily. Finally, Waziri, it is the issue of Sukuta Valley. You know, when you are told in Kenya that there is a place that is a no man's land, it is not on the border. It is between Samburu, Turkana, and Baringo, and somebody says, oh, you know, that is a no man's land. I think it just shows the level of governance that has failed, the ability to project power as a nation, because this is really internal. So for me, for us to resolve the issue of Turkana, Samburu, and even Baringo, Laikipia, we must settle the issue of Sukuta Valley. Thank you, Chair.
I will suggest as this, because it's actually members, it's 5:10 past 2. I'm going to give every member 3 minutes. Try to be to the point. Yeah, 2, 3. Just to the point, so that we will have time to have the CS respond. And just go in this order.
Okay. Asante sana mwenyekiti. Na asante waziri kwa kufika hapa tuongee mambo ya amani katika nchi yetu. Mimi ni mmoja ya wale walikuwa wameenda Baringo upande wa Baringo County, na tulifurahi jinsi vile uli act mara moja ukatuma security pale. Wamefurahi, wananchi walitutuma tukusalimie, na walifurahi kwa mitigation ambayo ulipeleka pale. Na mitigation ya kwanza ni mambo ya mashule kufunguliwa. Ingawa watoto wamerudi shule, lakini wanatumia madarasa mchana kusoma, alafu usiku ni dormitory. Na unajua nchi hiyo na mambo ya joto na mambo ya nyoka, wako na shida sana watoto pale. Kwa hivyo tungeomba kama kuna vile unaweza kutekeleza mambo ya kujenga mashule pale, ya kujenga dormitory, kujenga dining na mahali watoto madarasa, itakuwa ni vizuri. Tuliweza kutembelea mashule karibu 3 na tulifurahia jinsi vile imefunguliwa kwa haraka. Shida ni kwamba wazazi hawajarudi mahali wanatakikana kufika, sababu bado wanahofia kwamba wakaidi bado wako karibu na hawa. Kwa hivyo inatakikana uhakikisho kwamba hawako karibu na wanataka mabarabara ifunguliwe. Otherwise tulifurahia mitigation ambayo ulichukua kwa haraka sana, na kitu ambaye tuliongea, sitaki kurudia hiyo mambo ya mafuta. Umesema it is ni kitu ya administration na itatatuliwa. So opening of roads and enough facility for schools. Waliongelea mambo ya compensation, kwamba ng'ombe zao ziliibiwa na haijarudishwa, na wengi wao pia waliuawa. Waliongelewa juu ya hiyo. Wameongelea mambo ya walimu, kwamba wakiandikwa waandike walimu ambaye wanaelewa pale kuliko wale wanatoka sehemu zingine. Hizo ndizo matarajio yao, na ni hayo tu. Asante.
In that order, 2 minutes, Commissioner. Yeah. Well.
Chair, thank you very much, Chair. I think first of all I want to commend the CS for being an hands-on man. The impact of your visits were felt down there, and I want to thank you for this. Chair and Waziri, I want to mention what my colleague here has mentioned about the schools. One of the schools, when CS, we had students sleeping on the ground, on the floor, in the classroom. And I think, Chair, this is very easy to fix. Why can't we supply these children with beds and construct quickly some classrooms? And one of the issues which was raised, CS, is this relocating of the locals. I mean, people are removed from one area to another. It's very sad. And Chair, I think I would want to support what my our vice said, about accountability on our officers. We need to make them accountable. Now that we have signed the performance contract, CS, let people be accountable. And Chair, I also want to mention and applaud the people of Tiat, who are very frank. And CS, you know what they told us? that we know that the Tugans and the Jemus have never gone to the Tugans, to the Pokot to address and even steal cows. And that alone, Mr. CS, is that we need to address the issue of the other area. One other thing, and the last one, is what really makes some of us a bit worried. The issue of firearms. What is the source of firearms? We need to look at the source of firearms. When I see us, if we stop the source of firearms, we will stop everything. The second issue is the issue of this livestock which are stolen. If we can stop the market of this livestock, the business will be over. So I think those are my issues I want to raise. But when Waziri, your presence there was felt, and I want to thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, through the chair. First of all, I'd like to bring apologies from Honorable Aduma, who's the Member of Parliament for Nyakach. He's currently on the ground in Nyakach, given the high tension that is still in his constituency. Chairperson, with your permission, I'd like to say that I was impressed by the detail that the CS gave on the North Rift security situation. But when it comes to Nyakach, I'm sorry to say that the CS seems to have just glossed over it and attributed it to politics and the fact that it's an old issue. I'm sorry to say that when I CS, you sounded like you actually have no details of what's going on in the ground in Kericho. What is happening there currently is on stock theft. And it's already known that all the cattle that are being stolen from Nyakach are actually being sold in one particular location, in Sotik. That location is called Kaplatel. Given that that is already known, it would not be difficult to apprehend the criminals and the people who are involved in that. Because the meat from the cattle is actually being sold in the butcheries within that one particular location. I'm saying this because in all the other cases, you've given us a clear roadmap of actions that are being taken. For example, in Lamu, you already have a clear roadmap that you are going to create 6 security roads. But in this place, I don't think that I see any immediate action that would actually quell what is going on. I would also like, with your permission, Mr. Chair, and indulge me if I'm taking more than 2 minutes. A month ago, on the floor of the House, I put in a question on insecurity in Kisumu County in general, but in particular in Kisumu West. That question is still with your office, and even this morning, we contacted the officer that was put in charge of that situation, I think Madam Mary Nyaga, and every time we keep on getting promises that it's being addressed, the IG has not responded, and we are following it up. When I see, as you know, security matters, or insecurity matters for that matter, need immediate attention. And when it's left to go on for too long, that is when you end up with loss of lives. We agreed in a meeting that the Kisumu County leaders held in your office, and you welcomed all of us. And the agreement at that particular time was that we are going to have a complete overhaul of the security personnel within Kisumu County, because most of them have served for more than 7 years in the same capacity within the same areas, meaning that they are now localized and unable to detach themselves from situations that happen locally. Bonasias, I'd then like to request you to kindly give me an update on that. But having said that, I also want to say that we appreciate the effort that your ministry took in the Kericho situation, where you actually changed the officers in the stock theft unit, except that the officers in Kapkasor are still the same, and they are being accused of being biased, and therefore not being able to deal with the situation. I'm sorry that I took a little longer. I thank you.
No problem. I think they are valid. Okay, sure. Our time is really gone. Let's try to, yeah.
Thank you, Chair. I'm not going to take much time. Mine is to congratulate our CS, because what we have seen, listening to the responses given, I'm really satisfied, and I believe the 10 months or 12 months he is in office, we are seeing a lot in our security sector. You know, when he was appointed as a CS internal security, we know the situation, that how the situation was in Rift Valley and many parts of the country. The country is now calm. Students are now back to school. Small things happen, you know, some challenges happen, some small, you know, oversights happen, but largely we are really happy. The performance of our CS is exemplary, and we expect him to extend to other parts of the country like Northeastern. What I have seen in this list of KBRs, mine is to kindly request to also consider Mandera East, because I am in the Somalia and Ethiopia borders, and our teachers really, you know, especially the non-locals who are in those areas, are normally guarded by the KBRs and the NBRs, and you know, without having the numbers, you will have a problem. Sometimes they are taken from their houses, you know, to go and sleep in other places. If you don't have the numbers to fight maybe the terrorists, luckily ourselves, we don't have cattle stress. Sometimes we have clan issues, but the only enemy we have is terrorists. And terrorists normally target our non-local teachers and our non-local employees. We expect you to also post and increase the number of KBRs. But largely, I am extremely happy and glad to hear the responses given by our CS. Thank you very much. Continue with the same spirit. Thank you, Fatuma.
Thank you, Chair. First, I'd like to take this opportunity to commend the good job our CS is doing. And also, to add on what my brother said, I want to categorically say that the non-locals are not targeted, Mr. Waziri. And I said that the other day in Wajir, and I want to tell you the locals are protecting the teachers in Wajir. It cannot be the teachers are targeted and the other staff of the national government are safe. We need to ask ourselves why. So there's a little politics in that, Waziri, and I want you to look at that. And I was not going to say that, it just caught my attention. Mr. Waziri, my question is the issue of the border. We saw the border of Somalia, Kenya was opened. A few weeks later, the issue of terror emerged, and the whole process was halted. We just want to know, is this by design that, I don't know, I can't hear myself very well. I hope you can hear me, Waziri. Is it by design that the people of Northeastern, we don't want them to do business with the neighboring countries? That is one. Waziri, earlier this year, there were some livestock that were taken from Isiolo, Samburu side. Really suffered, who lost over 200 camels, you are aware. And up to today, they are unable to pay even the basic needs of their families. There are people who are really suffering, who are depressed, and we are trying to help them. Waziri, this is one Kenya, I believe. If we can bring those livestock back, we'll appreciate. Lastly, Waziri, I went with you to the border of Isiolo, Wajir. We promised to train the NPRs. We are still waiting, Waziri. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Chairman. Chairman, I have only two straight questions. Waziri, when we went to Laikipia, we found in Dondol, around the Dondol area, where in the forest the communities were flushed out or were ordered out and they obeyed, they left. The communities who reside there are traditional hunter-gatherer called the Yaku. What we found is a situation where they vacated the forest, and the reports are that the aggressors who were attacking actually came and occupied that area. And to date, they are still there. I would wish you, Waziri, to enlighten us what action you are taking. And number two, the residents for that area were affected both in schools. There were 4 schools which were closed in Bokish, in Sheku, in Narjijo, and Lokoseru. These schools are closed to date. What solution are you giving? Second question, Waziri. We observe the state of police officers operating in that area. They are operating in deplorable conditions. It's unfortunate, Waziri, that since independence, Doldol, we went with the chairman up to the residential area, the police station. Doldol police was built by the colonialists in the 40s. The situation in terms of both the working condition of police officers, the living conditions, the housing itself is semi-permanent since colonial time. I would wish to ask what the ministry, considering really what you have been trying to do and the way forward, as you have explained, that you really want to answer some of these basics. The police officers need a good working environment, and I think would wish to get it from you what plans you have to improve the police welfare in terms of the living areas and operation areas. Thank you.
So thank you so much. I know there are quite a number. You can just add one, because I think the issue you noted, the Mgogodo forest, the issue that the Yaku people, which are actually the minority, left their homes, then the very homes and houses were actually inhabited by the raiders. I told you we flew over and we can see livestock from the raiders actually living in those homes. It's Waziri
of Tiati, and we have agreed that also based on the need and the security are experiencing unique threats with supplementary protection through NPRs based on the levels of threat. So we agreed we'll work on a framework. Maybe the numbers will be little. And then we also put another requirement that according also to our intelligence, we have an idea where the firearms could be concentrated, the illegal firearms. So part of that engagement is that as we provide the community NPRs, that they should also mobilize the communities to surrender illegal firearms. And of course, if they don't surrender voluntarily, we'll go and take them by force. So we will not discriminate against any particular community. Number two, on the issue of Laikipia IDPs, I would like to get that information. We will have supplies immediately dispatched to those areas. Whether or not they were displaced from the gazetted areas, any Kenyan who is away from home and is living in a camp requires humanitarian support from government, even as we investigate why they have found themselves there. Yeah. They have not from the gazetted area, but because of the attacks, out of fear, they ran away. So the humanitarian support will be available if I can get the particular details. Number three, I agree with the Vice Chair on the failure of some of our officers to live up to our calling, and we are working hard to make sure that we reform ourselves before we are reformed by the public. the huge spaces that are ungoverned. Part of our phase 2 involves domination and occupancy of all areas that have remained ungoverned and provided spaces for terror and banditry to thrive. So those gazetted areas, we will provide security dominance. We are going to cover the entire of that area with security facilities. Some of them will turn them into training facilities for our recruits and security agents, both the Kenya Defence Forces and the National Police Service, KWS, KFS. So there'll be training grounds, including Mukogodo Forest. And just now that I'm there, I can mention that issue of the indigenous community. We have directed our teams there on a case-by-case basis, where it is established that the people who were living there are indigenous people. Ways should be sought to put them in maybe one section, and they have a right to continue living in that forest. So I think that information is new information, because there are people who have indigenous communities and they are not even harmful. They don't steal any livestock, and they are known by the local community. If you spoke to our former speaker, Mzee Kaparo, he'll tell you the communities know the thieves, they know the indigenous groups there, and they are there just to harvest honey, and they live there. Those ones can be put in one corner in that forest and continue living there without interrupting their lifestyle, because they are not harmful to what we are doing. And if there are bandits who have accessed that place, then we will flush them out. The other issue is the mobility, again from the vice chair of the committee, the issue of a fluid operation. Actually, we are mixing both static and fluid operational formations. We have some special forces that are fluid. They are not static. And they are today they are in Koloa, another day they will be in Baragoi, another day we'll take them to Boni, another day, because, you know, having a static establishment is not a long-term solution. Criminals can have alternative ways of achieving their targets. So we have, especially within the special forces, fluid formations that move from one place to another. We've registered a lot of success, especially in the intersection of Elgeyo Marakwet and Tiati. We have a small problem of Kamulogon Forest, which is the intersection of West Pokot and Marakwet West. We have another small problem at the Amaya area, intersection of Baringo and Samburu. That's why you've had a few cases in the Pura area, Malaso and so forth. And so we have fluid formations that are supplementing the static formations. The other thing is Kisumu, Kericho. I'm sorry, my sister, the Member of Parliament for Kisumu West, if I appeared not to be on top of things. But contrary to that, actually I'm very much on top of things. The only reason that I didn't have as much detail is the chairman said it was not part of the questions that I had come to answer. But I know for sure, and therefore I didn't want to spend a lot of time on it. It was a supplementary matter. But now that you have raised it, Honorable Member, I agree with you. The recent stock theft is politics, which was, you know, that problem arose around March when there were violent protests, and people disagreed because part of the community there was supporting violent protests, which is their democratic right. The other one was not supporting, and then they disagreed, and then it convoluted the commercial disputes, and then it gave some criminals now took advantage of that and started stealing cows. And what you have said is true. We have information, some of the information as to where that livestock has been destined to. I can report, Chair, that until now, 17 heads of cattle have been stolen from that area as a result of the current skirmish. We have recovered 11 of those 17. 4 suspects, that means around 6 are still outstanding, and we have made it clear. I have instructed the regional commissioner of Rift Valley and the regional commissioner of Nyanza and their teams. The 6 outstanding heads of cattle must be recovered. If they are not recovered, then someone must take responsibility for it. Because we have leads, as the MP has said, we have leads to where that livestock could have been destined, even the ones that was killed. Chair, I can report we have arrested 4 suspects who have been colluding with the butchers in the area which the MP has said. And they are helping us with investigations. We will arraign them in court. So we are making good progress. It's not true that we can relax on a security matter touching on any part of our country. That would be a betrayal of our constitutional oath of office. Honorable Chair, that's where we are on that one. Mandera East, the Honorable Witan, we have a bit of resources now. We are able, because of the threat of terror in that general area of Mandera, Wajir, Garissa, I'll be calling the leaders from that area this month for a sit down, and we are going to discuss together with our security teams how we enhance the NPR components and how we help us mobilize communities so that they can support the security operation and agencies to fight against terror. So we'll consider Mandera East because of the exposure to the threat of terror with regard to new numbers of NPR. The NPR that we have not trained, including the ones from Wajir, we didn't have resources, but now this budget, we have some resources. And we have similar untrained, I have said 703 countrywide are untrained. That includes 140 in Turkana and a few other places, including Wajir and Isiolo also. We will train them within the next 30 days. All the 703 NPRs will be trained and they will be armed to continue discharging their duties and support. We also made a promise on establishment of formed units. We established one already, and the second one again will be able to establish this financial year. Then the border issue. The border was not opened. What was agreed on is the schedule for reopening of the borders. But as you have rightly pointed out, we reviewed that decision based on an escalation of threats that we experienced. I would like to say this in a nutshell for the comfort of the committee and for the comfort of the country. We will reopen the Kenya-Somali border. It will be opened. And we will defeat terrorists. So what we have decided is to temporarily suspend that process until we get on top of the current wave of threat. And we are almost there. In the last 3 weeks, 1 month, we have managed the situation. And we will zero in and be a little more focused in flashing out those threats. And there's a lot of work going there silently, covertly, and we will succeed. The border will be opened and terror will be defeated. Then towards completion, I have heard about the outstanding 200 camels. I think we will just need to, again, we've already given instructions, but we will again upscale our resource that is also fully back into operation. I know the Honorable Sigei, member for Sotik, and the Honorable Liz Chelule, they were mentioning to a school where the children are sleeping in class at night. I'm sure you are talking about Kapindasum Primary School. I've been there 4 times, and we've been able to get for them some resources to finish that problem. I even left a promise there. The ministry is going to give 4 million shillings to support, but then also the Ministry of Education through the infrastructure will also support them. We'll sort that problem, not just for Kapindasum, but also for other schools, Kasiela, Arabal, Mukutane, and all the schools that were vandalized, including schools in Kapedo, schools in West Pokot. I have 11 schools in West Pokot which we will reconstruct, and also in Elgeyo Marakwet, Laikipia, and Samburu. Finally, on the conditions our police officers are living in, that is the reality. It would be foolish for me to deny that we have challenges in our infrastructure. We have the task force on police reforms have finished their work, and they are just waiting for a date to hand over the report to the appointing authority. This challenge of infrastructure and welfare of the police is well addressed, including the other challenges that, the gaps that we have identified. For example, creating linkages between the National Police Service and GAO, the GAO and NPRs, all those issues and welfare issues, including the welfare of NPRs, is handled through the task force, which is about to be presented, and the government will implement 100% all the recommendations of the task force on reforms in the National Police Service and Kenya Prison Service. Thank you.
Thank you.